After 3.5 years of marriage, I silently walked away upon uncovering my wife's secret affair. I vanished without a word, but 1 year later, my ex-wife, the one I ghosted, somehow managed to find me again. When I first met her, it felt like everything in my life finally made sense, like all the chaos, heartbreak, and loneliness I'd carried for years had been leading me to that exact moment. She wasn't the loudest person in the room, but there was something magnetic about her presence, the way she smiled softly when she spoke, how her laughter felt genuine, how her eyes seemed to listen even when her mouth didn't move. We met through mutual friends, and what started as casual conversations turned into long late-night talks that I secretly began to crave. It wasn't just attraction, it was a sense of peace, a calm I hadn't known before. With her, everything felt effortless. She made me laugh, challenged me when I was wrong, and somehow made ordinary days feel special. Within months, we became inseparable, best friends who slowly fell in love without even realizing it. When I proposed to her 2 years later, she cried before she even said yes, and that night, I remember thinking that I had found my forever. Our wedding was small but filled with love. I can still recall the look in her eyes when we exchanged vows, the way her hands trembled slightly as she held mine. We promised to grow old together, to face everything side by side, and I believed her with every beat of my heart. Those early years of marriage were beautiful, filled with laughter, road trips, movie nights, and long talks about our future. I thought we were unbreakable. I thought love like ours could survive anything. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. Sometimes, the people who make you feel safest are the same ones who end up breaking you the most. The first couple of years of our marriage felt like living inside a dream I never wanted to wake up from. We had our little apartment, our shared routines, and our quiet happiness that seemed to glow even in ordinary moments. She'd hum songs while cooking, tease me about how I always left my socks everywhere, and kiss me goodnight no matter how tired we were. Everything felt right, so right that I never imagined anything could go wrong. But slowly, almost quietly, something began to shift. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was subtle, like the warmth fading from a fire that still looks bright from a distance. She started spending more time on her phone, laughing at messages I wasn't part of, saying they were just memes or work chats. Her eyes, once so open and full of love, began to drift when I talked. At first, I convinced myself I was overthinking. Everyone changes a little after marriage, I told myself. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe I was the problem. But then came the excuses. Late nights at work, sudden urgent meetings, and weekend outings with friends I'd never met. When I'd ask questions, she'd smile and reassure me, her tone calm and practiced, and I'd believe her because I wanted to. Love makes you doubt your own senses before it doubts the person you love. I ignored the unease growing inside me, the pit in my stomach that told me something was off. From the outside, we were the perfect couple, still posting photos, still laughing at dinner, still playing our roles perfectly. But behind closed doors, there was distance, invisible but heavy, stretching between us. And I kept pretending not to feel it because I was afraid of what I might find if I looked too closely. Looking back, I can't believe how many signs I ignored, how many quiet warnings life tried to give me before everything fell apart. It started with small things, the way she would suddenly change her phone password without mentioning it, or how she'd tilt her screen slightly away when I walked by. She'd smile and say it was just privacy, and I'd nod, pretending that made sense. Then there were the nights when she'd stay up late, her face glowing in the light of her phone, fingers typing quickly, a faint smile on her lips that wasn't meant for me. Sometimes I'd wake up and see her still online, telling me she couldn't sleep, but her eyes told a different story. When I asked her if something was wrong, she'd brush it off with a laugh, saying I was just being paranoid. And I wanted so badly to believe her because the alternative, that she was lying, felt unbearable. I convinced myself that love means trust, and trust means not questioning too much. But deep inside, I could feel the cracks forming. She started wearing new perfume, dressing differently, and spending more time with friends I never saw. There were unfamiliar names in conversations, moments where she seemed lost in thought even when sitting right beside me. I tried to fight my doubts, to bury them under excuses. Maybe she was just growing, changing, becoming someone new, and maybe I just needed to catch up. I told myself love was about patience, about giving space, about not holding too tight. But what I didn't realize was that sometimes, giving too much space allows someone else to fill it. And by the time I understood that, it was already too late. The distance between us had turned into a wall. It happened on an ordinary evening, one that started like any other. She was in the shower, and I was looking for my charger, checking drawers and cushions until I noticed her phone lying on the table, screen glowing with a new message. Normally, I never touched her phone. I believed in trust, in giving space, but something in me hesitated that night, a quiet voice whispering that I needed to see. My hands trembled as I picked it up, half afraid of what I might find, half hoping I was wrong. The screen was open to a chat I didn't recognize, a name that meant nothing to me at first. But the words on that screen, the pet names, the plans, the messages filled with memories I wasn't part of, felt like knives cutting through my chest one by one. I scrolled further, each message confirming what I didn't want to believe. Pictures, late-night confessions, even "I love you." It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might pass out. I sat there frozen, staring at the evidence of her betrayal, unable to move, unable to cry. It was like watching our entire marriage collapse in silence. Every smile, every "I love you" she'd said suddenly replayed in my head, only now, they sounded hollow. The woman I thought I knew, the one I built my life around, had been sharing her heart with someone else. I didn't even feel anger at first, just disbelief. I kept thinking there must be an explanation, something that would make it all make sense. But deep down, I knew the truth. The person I loved wasn't the same anymore, and maybe she never really was. I remember sitting there in complete silence, staring at her phone as if maybe, if I looked long enough, the words would change, that somehow I'd misread everything. But they didn't. The truth was right there, raw and undeniable. My chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down on it, and my mind was a blur of noise and emptiness all at once. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't even move. It was as if every emotion inside me had frozen. My hands were shaking, my throat dry, and I just sat there, listening to the faint sound of water running in the shower, knowing that the woman I loved, the woman I married, was only a few steps away, and yet she felt like a stranger. I wanted to ask her why, to scream and demand answers, but no words came out. There's a strange kind of pain that doesn't explode. It sinks quietly into you, like poison. That's what it felt like. A slow, creeping heartbreak that numbed everything else. I remember staring at our wedding photo on the wall, the two of us smiling like nothing could touch us. I wondered when exactly that version of us had died. I thought about every time she said she loved me, every plan we made for the future, and it all began to feel like scenes from someone else's life. I kept waiting to feel anger, but it never came. Only emptiness, a hollow ache that spread through me until I couldn't tell if I was breathing or just existing. I knew in that moment that something inside me had broken beyond repair, and no apology, no reason, would ever fix it. I didn't know what I'd do next. I just knew I couldn't stay the same. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside her in the dark, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, wondering how she could sleep so peacefully while my entire world had fallen apart. Every breath she took felt like a reminder of the lie I was living in. I turned to look at her, memorizing her face in the dim light, the same face I had once found comfort in, now unfamiliar and distant. My mind raced through every memory, every moment of laughter and love, all tainted now by the thought that none of it had been real. I thought about confronting her, waking her up, demanding answers, but the words got stuck in my throat. What was there left to say? The truth was already written all over her messages. There was nothing she could say that would unbreak my heart. Somewhere between anger and exhaustion, a strange calmness settled over me, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting what's already lost. I got out of bed quietly, trying not to wake her, and began packing a small bag. A few clothes, my wallet, my phone, nothing else. When I finished, I sat at the edge of the bed and looked at her one last time. I wanted to hate her, but all I felt was sadness. Sadness for the love we once had, and for the version of me who still believed it could last forever. I took a piece of paper from the desk, wrote a single line, *, don't look for me. *, then I left the note where she'd see it in the morning. I walked out of that door without a sound, leaving behind my home, my memories, and the life I thought was mine. The silence that followed was deafening. When I stepped outside that night, the air felt colder than I remembered. The streets were empty, the city lights distant and blurry through the tears I refused to let fall. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I walked for hours, my bag heavy on my shoulder, my heart even heavier. Every step felt like I was walking away from a version of myself I would never see again. By dawn, I found a small hotel and checked in with shaking hands. I stared at the ceiling for hours, feeling numb, wondering if she had woken up yet, if she had found the note, if she even cared. The days that followed blurred together. I deleted her number, erased our photos, and blocked her on every platform. I wanted to vanish completely, not just from her life but from the person I had been with her. I found a small apartment in another city, started a new job, and kept to myself. I told no one the real reason I had moved. To everyone else, it looked like I just needed a change, and in a way, that wasn't a lie. I wanted a change so complete that not even my reflection would remember the pain I carried. The first few weeks were the hardest. Every corner, every scent, every song seemed to remind me of her. Some nights I'd wake up thinking I heard her voice, only to realize it was just the echo of memory. I learned to fill my silence with routine: work, meals, sleep, repeat. I told myself that if I just stayed quiet long enough, maybe the pain would fade. I didn't know it then, but I had become exactly what I felt, a ghost. It took months before I started to feel even a hint of normal again. At first, every day felt like survival: waking up, going to work, coming home, sleeping, and repeating it all without purpose. The silence in my apartment was loud, but over time, I began to find a strange kind of comfort in it. No arguments, no lies, no pretending. Just me and the quiet. I started walking after work, letting the city's noise drown out my thoughts. Sometimes I'd stop at a park and just sit, watching strangers laugh and talk, wondering if they too were hiding broken hearts behind their smiles. Slowly, the sharpness of the pain dulled into something softer. It didn't vanish, but it stopped suffocating me. I began cooking again, reading, even laughing at small things like old movies or random jokes from coworkers. It felt strange, almost guilty at first, as if I didn't deserve to feel okay after everything that happened. But healing has no permission. It just happens when you least expect it. Some nights, the memories would still sneak in. The sound of her voice, the way she used to hold my hand, the scent of her perfume, and it would sting, but not destroy me like before. I learned that moving on isn't about forgetting. It's about learning to live with what you can't change. I realized I didn't need closure from her or answers that would never make sense. I just needed to accept that love, even when real, can die. And maybe that's okay. With every passing day, the ache in my chest grew quieter, replaced by something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Not joy, not excitement, just calm. And for the first time in months, that was enough. A whole year passed before I even realized it. Time has a strange way of moving when you're healing. Slowly at first, painfully, then suddenly it begins to flow again without asking for your permission. By then, I had built a small routine that gave my life structure. I'd wake up early, make my own breakfast, go to work, and come home to the same quiet apartment that once felt like a cage but now felt like peace. I had new coworkers, new habits, even new favorite places. A small cafe by the corner where the owner knew my order by heart and greeted me with a smile every morning. The weight on my chest that used to follow me everywhere was lighter now, not gone completely, but bearable. I found myself breathing easier, laughing without guilt, and even sleeping through the night without waking up to thoughts of her. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in a mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. I looked calmer, older maybe, but stronger in ways I hadn't been before. There were still moments when her memory would flicker in my mind, like an echo from a life that no longer belonged to me. But it didn't hurt as much. I could think of her without breaking down, and that was its own kind of victory. I stopped wondering what she was doing or if she ever thought of me. She had become a chapter one had closed quietly, one I didn't feel the need to reopen. For the first time in a long while, I felt content, not with everything being perfect, but with knowing I had survived something that once felt impossible. I thought the past was behind me for good. But life, as I was about to learn, wasn't done testing me yet. It was a Sunday morning when everything changed again. I remember waking up to the soft sunlight coming through the curtains, feeling unusually calm, almost happy. I made coffee, sat by the window, and was about to scroll through the news on my phone when I noticed a message from an unknown number. At first, I ignored it. Unknown numbers usually meant spam or work-related messages, and I wasn't in the mood for either. But something made me open it anyway. The moment I did, my heart stopped. It was her. After a full year of silence, there it was, her name, her words, her presence piercing through the walls I had carefully built. The message was short, simple, but enough to pull the ground from under me. It said, "*I found you. *" My hands went cold, my breathing shallow. I stared at the screen, rereading those 3 words over and over again, as if they might change if I looked long enough. How did she find me? I had changed my number, moved cities, deleted every trace of my old life. I made sure of it. My mind raced through possibilities, mutual friends, social media, maybe even sheer luck. But more than confusion, I felt fear. Not fear of her, but of everything she represented. The pain, the memories, the version of myself I had buried so carefully. I didn't reply. I locked my phone and tried to pretend it didn't happen, but the calm I'd built over months shattered instantly. The silence I once found peace in now felt heavy again, filled with old ghosts I thought I'd escaped. I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a message. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning of something I wasn't ready to face. The message haunted me for days. I tried to ignore it, but my mind kept circling back to it like a wound I couldn't stop touching. "I found you." 3 simple words that managed to dig up everything I had buried. At first, I convinced myself it was a mistake, maybe even a prank. But then came another message, and another. This time, she didn't just say she found me, she said she wanted to talk. She wrote about missing me, about needing closure, about wanting to explain everything. I didn't reply to any of them. I thought if I stayed silent long enough, she would give up and disappear again. But she didn't. The messages kept coming, each one a little more desperate than the last. Then came the emails, long and emotional, filled with apologies and stories about how she had changed, how she still thought about me every day. She told me she'd been searching for me for months, tracking down where I might have gone after I left. I felt anger and sadness fighting inside me. Part of me wanted to delete everything and move on, but another part, the weaker, curious part, wanted to know what she could possibly say after all this time. I hated that she still had the power to shake my peace so easily. I stopped sleeping properly again, checking my phone at odd hours, dreading another notification yet feeling anxious when there wasn't one. The past I thought I had escaped was now knocking at my door again, relentless and uninvited. I didn't know what she wanted, or why she cared after all this time, but one thing was clear, the ghost I had become wasn't invisible anymore. She had found me, and I couldn't hide forever. Eventually, I gave in. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was exhaustion, or maybe I just wanted to finally close the door she kept trying to open. After weeks of ignoring her messages, I agreed to meet. We decided on a quiet cafe on the edge of the city, a place where no one would recognize us, where the past couldn't find an audience. The morning of the meeting, my stomach twisted with nerves. I almost didn't go. I must have sat in my car for 10 minutes outside the cafe, staring at the door, wondering what good could possibly come out of seeing her again. But something in me needed it, not for her, but for myself. When I finally walked in, I saw her immediately. She was sitting by the window, looking out, holding a cup of coffee with both hands like she was trying to keep herself from falling apart. She looked different, smaller somehow. The confidence she once carried so easily was gone. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, the world went silent. I couldn't read her expression. Was it guilt, sadness, relief? I didn't know. I sat down across from her, and neither of us spoke for what felt like forever. Then she whispered my name, softly, like she was afraid it might break me. Hearing it again after all that time felt strange, almost foreign. Her voice trembled when she said she didn't expect me to actually come. I wanted to ask her why she did it, why she ruined everything, but the words wouldn't come. All I could do was look at her and see 1,000 memories reflected back at me. For the first time since I left, I realized the past wasn't done with me, not yet. We sat there in silence for a long time, both of us unsure how to start. The air between us was heavy, thick with unspoken words and memories that refused to fade. Finally, she began talking, her voice soft but shaky. She told me she had made a terrible mistake, that the affair wasn't about love but confusion and loneliness. She said she didn't know why she did it, that she had been chasing something meaningless while destroying something real. I listened quietly, not because I forgave her, but because I wanted to understand the person I once thought I knew so well. Her eyes filled with tears as she spoke about the night she spent crying after I left, the guilt that ate at her, and how she tried to move on but couldn't. She said she had looked for me everywhere, asked friends, searched online, anything to find a trace of me. She said she didn't want to win me back, only to say sorry face to face, to tell me she still thought of me every day. I wanted to believe her, but the pain of her betrayal still lived deep inside me, and it was impossible to separate her words from the wound she caused. I told her that apologies didn't erase choices, and forgiveness wasn't something that could be begged for, it had to be earned. She nodded slowly, as if she already knew I wouldn't forgive her. For a brief moment, I saw the woman I once loved, broken, lost, and human. But it didn't change the truth. What she shattered between us couldn't be rebuilt. As we sat there, I realized this meeting wasn't about closure for her, it was for me. I needed to see her one last time to truly let go. When she stopped talking, the silence between us felt heavier than before. I stared at her, trying to find something familiar in her face, but all I saw was a stranger wearing the memories of someone I used to love. She looked tired, older, as if the weight of regret had carved lines into her expression. I could see she was waiting for me to say something, maybe to comfort her, maybe to tell her it was all okay. But I couldn't. The words wouldn't come, because they didn't exist. I wasn't angry anymore, not like before. I had spent all my anger long ago. What I felt now was emptiness, the kind that comes when pain finally burns itself out. I told her I appreciated her honesty, that I understood she was sorry, but understanding didn't mean I could forget. I told her I didn't hate her, but I couldn't love her either. The moment those words left my mouth, her eyes filled with tears. She tried to smile through them, nodding like she had expected this all along. She said she knew I had moved on, that she had no right to ask for anything, but she was glad I gave her a chance to speak. She said she could live with my silence, but not with the thought that I might hate her forever. I told her I didn't. Hate takes too much energy, and I was done carrying it. We sat there a little longer, both knowing this was truly the end. When she stood up to leave, she paused, looking at me one last time before whispering, "You were the best thing that ever happened to me." I didn't reply. I just watched her walk away, realizing that this time, it really was over. After she left, I stayed in the cafe for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me. It felt strange, like I had just watched the final scene of a story that once consumed my entire life. The sound of cups clinking and people chatting around me faded into the background as I sat there, letting everything sink in. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to chase answers or replay the past in my head. I just felt quiet. It wasn't peace, not exactly, but it was something close. I thought about how much energy I had spent being angry, how much time I had wasted trying to make sense of betrayal, and how none of it really mattered anymore. What was done was done. She was gone, and I was still here. That realization carried a strange kind of power. I finished my coffee slowly, watching the steam disappear, thinking about how endings rarely come with closure wrapped in neat words. Sometimes they just come with silence and acceptance. When I finally stepped outside, the air felt different. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and for once, I noticed how beautiful it was. I walked home without looking back, each step feeling lighter than the last. I didn't feel hatred, regret, or even sadness anymore. Just relief. Relief that the ghost of her no longer haunted every corner of my mind. That night, when I lay down to sleep, I didn't dream about her. I didn't wake up thinking of what if or what could have been. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt free, not because I forgot, but because I finally learned to live with the truth and let it stay in the past. The days that followed felt strangely calm. There was no emotional storm, no wave of sadness or anger, just a quiet sense of finality that settled deep inside me. It was as if closing that chapter with her had opened a space in my heart that had been locked for years. I began noticing the small things again, the taste of morning coffee, the sound of rain on my window, the way sunlight filtered through the trees on my walk to work. Life wasn't exciting, but it was real, and that was enough. I stopped checking my phone for messages, stopped wondering if she would reach out again. It didn't matter anymore. The part of me that once needed answers had finally gone silent. I found comfort in simple routines, things I had once overlooked, cooking dinner, reading late at night, listening to music without skipping songs that reminded me of her. Even those songs felt different now. They no longer hurt, they just existed as echoes of another time. My friends started noticing the change in me too. They said I looked lighter, more at peace. Maybe they were right. I had spent so long carrying grief disguised as anger that I forgot what peace even felt like. Now, I was learning again, slowly, quietly, patiently. Some nights, I still thought about her, but the thoughts no longer had the power to twist my heart. Instead, they came and went like passing clouds. I realized that healing wasn't about forgetting or pretending it never happened. It was about accepting that pain is part of the story, but not the whole story. I had finally made peace with the past, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel empty, it felt possible. As weeks turned into months, I noticed how much I had changed without even realizing it. I had grown quieter, not in a sad way, but in a peaceful one. I no longer felt the need to explain my pain or justify my choices to anyone. I simply existed in the calm I had earned through chaos. Life slowly began to open new doors, not dramatic ones, but small, meaningful ones. I started taking walks at sunrise, something I never used to do. I met new people, not with the hope of filling a void, but out of genuine curiosity about life again. I even reconnected with old friends I had distanced myself from during the dark days. There was laughter again, real laughter that didn't feel forced or hollow. I realized how much time heartbreak steals, how it convinces you that happiness is something that belongs to your past. But here I was, smiling without reason, finding joy in ordinary things, the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of music drifting from a nearby shop, the warmth of sunlight on my skin. Every day felt like a quiet victory. I didn't need grand gestures or new love to feel whole. I had found peace in solitude, strength in silence, and clarity in forgiveness. I understood now that healing isn't a destination. It's a journey that changes you in ways pain never could. The scars remained, but they no longer defined me. They simply reminded me of how far I'd come. I had once thought my story ended the day I walked away from her, but I was wrong. That was only the beginning of me finding myself again, piece by piece, not the man I was, but the man I had become through surviving it all. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker against the night sky, I realized how different my heart felt. There was no bitterness left, no lingering ache, just quiet gratitude for everything that had shaped me. The pain that once consumed me had turned into perspective. I began to see my past not as a tragedy but as a lesson, a brutal, necessary one. I had learned what it meant to give, to lose, and to rebuild from the ashes of something I once thought would last forever. I understood now that love isn't always meant to stay. Sometimes it comes to teach you who you are when it's gone. I thought about her occasionally, not with anger or longing, but with acceptance. Maybe she had found peace too. Maybe we both had to break to learn what peace even meant. Life had moved forward, and so had I. I had new dreams, new goals, and a deeper appreciation for moments I used to overlook. The world felt bigger now, brighter, even in its imperfections. I realized how much strength it took to walk away, to stay silent when every part of me wanted closure, to build a new life from nothing. That strength had quietly become part of who I was. I no longer defined myself by what happened to me but by how I rose after it. The man who once ran away in heartbreak had grown into someone who could look back without fear. That night, as the cool wind brushed against my face, I smiled for no reason. It wasn't happiness in the loud, dramatic sense. It was peace, deep and real. The kind that doesn't come from forgetting, but from finally being free to remember without pain. Months later, life had settled into a gentle rhythm. I had stopped measuring time by what happened before and after her. The days flowed naturally, filled with work, friends, and quiet moments that made me feel grounded. One afternoon, while I was cleaning my apartment, I came across an old box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were small fragments of my past, photographs, letters, and keepsakes I once thought I'd never look at again. My first instinct was to throw them away, but instead, I sat down and began going through them slowly. Each picture told a story, some beautiful, some painful, but all part of the same life I had lived. I looked at our smiles in those photos, the laughter frozen in time, and instead of anger, I felt gratitude. Those moments, even if followed by heartbreak, had still been real once. They were pieces of who I was, pieces that helped me grow into who I had become. I realized then that healing didn't mean erasing the past, it meant learning to carry it with grace. I placed the items back in the box, not to forget them, but to honor the chapter they represented. When I closed the lid, it felt symbolic, not of loss, but of peace. I put the box away in a closet, knowing I might never open it again, and that was okay. Some memories are meant to stay quietly in the corners of our lives, not haunting us but reminding us how far we've come. That evening, as I watched the sunset paint the sky in fading gold, I felt a sense of completion. The story that once broke me had finally found its ending, not in revenge or reunion, but in acceptance and quiet strength. Time has a way of healing things you once thought would never stop hurting. Looking back now, I can see how every moment, even the painful ones, led me to where I am today. I no longer see my story as one of betrayal and loss, but of survival and rebirth. The man who walked away that night years ago was broken, scared, and uncertain of who he was without her. But the man I became afterward learned that solitude isn't emptiness. It's space to rebuild, to understand, and to grow. I learned to find happiness in small things again, to open my heart to new possibilities, not because I needed love to feel complete, but because I had finally learned to love myself. The scars are still there, quiet reminders of what I endured, but they no longer sting. They simply tell a story, one of endurance, forgiveness, and rediscovery. Sometimes I still pass by the cafe where we last met, and for a moment, the memory flickers, her face, her voice, her apology, but it doesn't hurt anymore. It feels like watching an old movie of someone else's life. I smile, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude for the person I've become through all of it. Life has taught me that endings aren't failures, they're just beginnings disguised as heartbreak. Every loss leaves behind wisdom, every scar holds a lesson, and every goodbye makes space for something new. I don't know what the future holds, but I no longer fear it. I've made peace with my past, embraced my present, and learned to trust whatever comes next. My story didn't end when I walked away. It truly began the moment I learned to stand on my own and keep walking forward.